Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the Anti-Tech channel. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to talk about a very popular topic today, one that's been blowing up all across the internet, and even the mainstream media channels have even picked up on it. So that's how you know, because they're usually a bit behind what's going on in the internet, but they've talked about it, and that's the South Korean birth rate collapse. So first, I want to talk about the situation. Then I want to get into a little bit of history. I want to talk about how technology and industrialization kind of brought upon the collapse. And then I'm going to talk about why it's going to get worse. So it's a little bit more moist today. So I've decided to take refuge underneath a pavilion. I'm probably the only person at this park today. It's because it's very wet. And let's get into the history first of South Korea, because I feel like it's very helpful to understand the industrialization process that happened. And I'm going to go as far back as the Korean Civil War, because before that, Korea didn't industrialize at all. So the Korean Civil War, to put it simply, there was the North, which is going through a communist revolution, and the South was more hesitant to the fruits of communism. So the Chinese government said, hey, it would be good if we had another communist state. So they backed North Korea, and the US said, hey, we have a containment policy. We don't really want communism to spread. So they backed the South. And it was a pretty brutal war. Let's not cut around the bush. It was pretty bad. And it ended up accomplishing basically nothing, because the South remained non-communist and the North became communist. So they basically pushed back to where they started at the parallel line, and you just had a very, the ethnicities were the same, the language was the same, but you had very, very different views right next to each other in the same peninsula. So the period after the Korean Civil War and South Korean society has been marketed essentially by rapid industrialization and increases in advances in technology, a rapid acceleration in technology. And I'd like to talk about the effects that this rapid industrialization had on society. Firstly, it was the urbanization. You had rapid urbanization. The South Koreans moved from the rural lands to big cities like mainly Seoul, Busan, and a few others. Secondly, a few small companies became massive, massive companies, and they ended up dominating Korean society. Panasonic, LG, Hyundai, all these companies grew massively in size, and they became almost like an oligarchy, to be honest with you. Third was there was a shift from farming to a strong emphasis on education. And obviously any South Korean will tell you today, the emphasis on education is very, very intense. South Koreans study for long periods of time in school, and then when they get out of school, they get the they get the prize of studying even more with tutors and self-studying, and it's just a lot of intense studying. Ooh, it's gotten kind of chilly. So let's get into the 3 reasons why I believe the South Korean fertility will decline because of technology and industrialization. So the first reason is because technology is ultimately antisocial, especially social media. The second reason is because the life that South Koreans live now in industrialized society is much different than how humans have lived for millions of years. And this has created some noticeable psychological issues, clear as day. And the third reason is because humans will, in my personal opinion, I know this hasn't, it's happened to some extent, but ultimately it's going to become far more prevalent, and that's humans beginning dating artificial intelligence. And it doesn't even have to be like AI or chatbot or like actual robots. And we already see it now. There was a story the other day where someone was dating their ChatGPT. Okay, let's get into the first reason, and that is technology is ultimately antisocial. This is very evident. You see it in Japan with herbivore men, men who just do not leave their rooms because they play video games or do nothing all day. You have a large percentage of the South Korean male population that doesn't want to doesn't want to work for society, doesn't want to engage. A lot of people are just like addicted to video games, social media, and not their fault at all. These companies make these apps extremely addictive. They make them very hard to quit. And this will just drive fertility down. And the second reason is because the industrialized society is such an evolutionary mismatch with how we've been for millions of years. It's creating psychological problems. And you definitely see it. It's definitely evident. Like I mentioned before, a lot of South Korean men, for millions of years, they've been hunters, or at the very least farmers, where they actively engage their body. Now they're working behind a desk, staring at a screen all day. And this is not really the way humans have worked for millions of years. This causes depression, feelings of hopelessness, and it doesn't work psychologically with a lot of people, and a lot of people just disengage from the society because it's just such a big mismatch between how humans have been and the way they live now. Also, there is evidence that Facebook and TikTok and all these social media companies cause a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, and I'd argue that's probably not the best for the birth rate. And the third is more prospective, but I believe will have probably the biggest impact, even bigger than what I've mentioned before, and that's humans will begin dating AI. So AI, I'd argue, as of October 13th, 2025, is pretty good. I remember when I used to ask it questions, I think I asked the 10 most famous Japanese Americans, and this was a couple of years back, or a few years back now, and AI gave me Morgan Freeman as one of the most famous Japanese American. It wouldn't do that now. It just wouldn't do that now. AI has gotten way better, and it's just going to get better and better until people will begin dating AI regularly. You have a loneliness epidemic, probably the biggest one we've seen in human history, brought on specifically by technology. And when South Koreans begin regularly dating, when it becomes normalized, the birth rate is just going to drop even lower. So these are the reasons why I think the fertility will get lower in South Korea. I don't think cash payments will work, or any kind of financial incentive. Maybe it might help a little bit, but not enough to bring it above the replacement rate. And those are the reasons why I believe. So I hope you guys have a great day. I hope you learned something, or were interested in what I was talking about, and I really appreciate you watching the video. Thank you. Have a nice day.